1. I've been going to the newly opened coffee shop for half a month in a row. I show up punctually and diligently, more like clocking in for work than the staff. Every time I sit in the corner, and today is no exception. What would you like to drink? The clerk in a long dress approaches. Her slender and straight figure is like a white iris, blooming on its own. I'm in a panic and cover the blush on my face with the menu. It's strange. Usually she's not in charge of this table. Xiaolin is off work, so I'm taking her place. As if she could read my mind, she answered my question. The same as usual. A cappuccino, right? Yes. I'm so fascinated that I just keep nodding. After she leaves, I regretfully pinch my thigh hard. Damn it, such a good opportunity, yet I forgot to ask for her name. I'm extremely depressed and don't notice the fleeting smile on the clerk's face. 2. Please enjoy your meal/drink. Thank you. When the coffee was delivered, I was frowning and furiously tapping the keyboard, complaining to my friend. The comic should be updated, but the new editor made me revise the manuscript repeatedly and even deleted my favorite part. I was very anxious but didn't know what to do. A moment later, fair and slender fingers tapped gently on the edge of the table. Excuse me. Thinking that the sound of my typing was too loud, I suddenly looked up, wanting to apologize, but immediately fell silent. At such a close distance, I could even smell the faint coffee aroma on the other person. His eyes drooped slightly, and his bright and gentle gaze was fixed on me. His curly hair fell like swirls, easily captivating me. It was the clerk from before who had returned, still carrying ice cream. It turned out that he was wearing a name tag on his chest. Maybe I didn't dare to look directly before and thus didn't notice it. I suppressed the excitement in my heart and secretly remembered. Henry. But I didn't order ice cream. It's complimentary. Henry nodded and neatly took away the tray. Consuming sugar can improve your mood. Huh? Could it be that my expression was too obvious? Thank you very much. I stammered my thanks and then froze again. The hem of the coffee shop uniform had layers of ruffled lace, like a gorgeous cream cake. The fabric trembled and swayed. As Henry moved, it inadvertently brushed against my ankle. The ticklish sensation quickly spread. Noticing that I was distracted, Henry raised his eyebrows slightly. What's wrong? Don't you like this flavor? I like it. My face flushed, and I scolded myself in my heart. How shameless I am, receiving special attention, yet still daydreaming. 3. I stayed up for 2 whole nights and finally submitted my manuscript before the deadline. With hurried steps, I dragged my tired body towards the coffee shop, but I bumped into someone at the entrance of the store. I staggered backwards, but my shoulders were promptly held. A familiar fragrance. I looked up blankly. It was Henry. Sorry, are you okay? I'm sorry. It's all my fault for not looking at the road. The two of them said in unison. I tried my best to suppress the corners of my mouth to avoid showing a silly grin. It's almost like a hug. Close contact, great. Just before I could stand firmly, someone pushed me hard from behind, saying, "You're really in the way. Don't block the path." At the same time, an urgent reminder came from my ear. Watch out. As a result, before I could react, I was really embraced by Henry. My mind went blank, and I felt my whole head steaming. For I was sitting blankly in the coffee shop, and I didn't come to my senses for a long time. After all, at the moment of being hugged, Cupid didn't shoot me with an arrow. Instead, he picked up the arrow and stabbed me through without mercy. I silently vowed that I must pluck up the courage to get Henry's contact information today. In the evening, there were only a few guests in the coffee shop. Behind the bar, Henry was quietly wiping the cups, quite absorbed. The setting sun became a natural spotlight, and Henry was bathed in the light. His curly hair was fluffy, and the golden edges were illuminated to be furry. However, there was a wisp of hair on his forehead that stuck up, swaying, stubbornly refusing to fall down. Acute contrast. I watched Henry working earnestly and felt a sense of peace that I hadn't experienced for a long time. But this peace was broken in an instant. The glass fell to the ground with a clear sound. "Sir, I'm sorry. To apologize, don't you need to show some sincerity?" I looked towards the source of the sound. The man who bumped into me at the door of the store was grinning strangely, pointing at the clerk who was bowing frequently in front of him. The clerk looked extremely aggrieved. "I'll pay for your dry cleaning fee, but you can't touch my leg." Being stabbed in the back by the contemptuous gazes from all directions, the man became angry from embarrassment. "Nonsense. After saying that, he picked up the coffee, seemingly about to pour it on her. I was the closest, and my body reacted before my mind. I grabbed the man's hand and twisted it at an angle. The shop assistant was unharmed, but she looked at the side of me worriedly and said, "Manager." Oh no. I turned my head and found that the coffee had all been splashed on Henry. 5. The man was driven away. I followed Henry closely. "Sorry. Let me pay for the dry cleaning fee. You showed courage in a just cause. I can't thank you enough. It's what I should do." I realized later that we were alone, and I was so nervous that my heart was racing. The shape of those eyes was like two sweet almonds. When they curved with a smile, the innocent and naive feeling was extremely strong. The sunset glow was neatly divided by the railing outside the window and then spilled in, so the harp of light appeared between us. Henry's whisper was like an angel singing a hymn, flowing slowly. "Haven't you rested well? You look exhausted." Yes, I felt like crying but had no tears. After staying up all night, I must have looked decadent and haggard, but I wanted to see Henry so much that I still came to the store. I turned my groggy brain and suddenly remembered my original goal. "Excuse me, could you give me your contact information?" I summoned up my courage, blushed, and handed out my phone with both hands, in a posture like bowing. "Why are you being so solemn?" Henry laughed so hard that his shoulders were shaking, and then asked out of the blue, "I'm older than you. Does that matter?" The voice seemed hoarser than usual. "I'm an adult." I knew I looked silly, but I couldn't think of any other answer. "That's not what I'm talking about." Henry slightly curved the corners of his lips, leaned forward. After I shrank into the corner with no way to retreat, he lifted my skirt and said word by word, "Do you understand?" I was stunned, so shocked that I was about to leave in a daze without saying a word. But he stretched out his long leg and hooked me back to his side. "Where do you want to go?" 6. The number of clerks hasn't reached the required amount yet. As the store manager, I have to step in myself. Of course, I've always liked dressing up beautifully. After explaining briefly, Henry fell silent, seemingly planning to let me digest it on my own. He hummed a song, put down the hem of his dress, and spun around with light steps. The intricate embroidery on the long dress was in the pattern of flowers, which seemed to come alive as he spun, blooming passionately and brushing against my legs. My mind was in chaos, as if I was spinning with him. Alright, Henry had never said that he wasn't a man. It was I who had made a preconceived assumption. So that's how it is. I didn't want to offend him, but I hadn't fully recovered from the state of being in a daze, so I stammered when speaking. "That really hurts." Henry turned his head and examined my expression. What a cold reaction. Even so, he was still smiling. I'm sorry. Damn it, when will this stuttering problem caused by nervousness be cured?" "Mobile phone." He held out his palm to me. "I'll leave my number for you. Or, do you no longer need it?" Henry blinked his eyes pitifully and deliberately drawled his voice. "That's not it." I obediently handed it to him, but the phone ran out of power at a crucial moment. It's really like the house with a leak getting caught in continuous night rain. The embarrassment reached a new level. I lowered my head, pretended to be busy, and fidgeted with my fingers, saying, "Sorry, since we met, James seems to be always apologizing." Henry pondered. "He's really not good at socializing." I had nothing to say. After all, I had already been ridiculed for being like a machine, and I still had this self-awareness. Wait a minute, how does he know my name? Before I could ask my doubts, a cool and moist touch came from my body. I shuddered all over, because Henry took out a highlighter from the pocket on his chest, bit off the pen cap, and wrote something beside my collarbone. "My phone number." He met my gaze and explained. The tip of the pen directly touched the skin and slid slowly. I unconsciously held my breath, curled my fingertips, and tensed up all over. The rustling sound of friction. Henry's approaching breath fell on the side of my neck. I'm sure I blushed. Does he need to get this close to write? Could it be that his eyesight is poor, and the time is a bit too long? When I was hesitating whether to speak, the distance was widened again. All done. Henry stepped back and looked me up and down, admiring his masterpiece. "You'll come again, won't you?" I nodded randomly, praying that he didn't notice my blushing face. His smile became even more delighted. "See you tomorrow." My heart was still pounding when I left. As for Henry's words, "I'm so looking forward to it." whispered as he stared at my back. They dissipated in the evening breeze in an instant, leaving no trace. 7. The next day, after getting up, I was restless. First, I sprinkled sugar on the fried eggs instead of salt. Then I accidentally tripped over the cleaning robot. Before going out, I tried to style my hair, but ended up with my head reeking of hairspray and had to wash it off. As I was about to reach the coffee shop, I subconsciously adjusted my collar, but the top button somehow fell off and rolled forward. It was really a mess. I went chasing after it with a woebegone face. The button rolled and stopped beside a pair of leather shoes. The owner of the leather shoes picked it up, tossed it gently, and then caught it. "Henry, it's me." He always seems to show up when I'm at my most embarrassed. He looks so handsome in men's clothes that I can't help but stare. "Is James racing with the button?" "I've stopped it," he said with a smile, spreading out his palm as he spoke. The button was shining brightly in the center. "Here you are." "Thank you." But before I could take it, he closed his fingers. "Come in. I'll sew it on for you." Henry is so kind, always ready to help and deft-handed. But my hand was still tightly held by him. I was so shocked that I even forgot to say thank you. My hand. Before I could finish speaking, my attention was diverted by another move of Henry's. He turned over the welcome sign at the store entrance, and closed came into view. Why? Noticing my confusion, Henry didn't slow down his steps at all. It might take a long time. He gave a bright smile and stopped talking, not explaining further. Strange. I was clearly just here for an appointment, but at this moment, I had the illusion of a lamb walking into the tiger's mouth. Henry's house is just upstairs from the coffee shop. The light at the door is a bit dim. The light in the entrance hall broke the day before yesterday, and I haven't had time to fix it yet. If you can't see clearly, you can hold on to me. Okay. Without suspecting anything, I took hold of Henry's sleeve. He was slightly startled, then led me to the living room and motioned for me to sit on the sofa. "Take it off." He took out a needle and thread and came straight to the point. "This is only natural. I can't possibly let Henry sew the button while I'm wearing the clothes. Otherwise, wouldn't I have to be encircled in his arms or sit face to face on his lap?" "Wait a minute, sit on his lap?" I scolded myself for being like a pervert, and tried my best to control myself from imagining those charming scenes, but they kept popping into my mind with pink bubbles. The feeling of unbuttoning in his gaze is very subtle. I wanted to speed up, but the more anxious I was, the more mistakes I made. "Sorry, it's tied a bit tight." It's all because I deliberately wore a new shirt to meet Henry, and forgot to cut the buttonhole a little wider in advance, which has led to this embarrassing situation. Concentrating on struggling with the buttons, I no longer paid attention to where Henry's gaze was falling. When I unbuttoned the third one, he coughed and turned his face away. "Take your time. I'm not rushing you." I looked at him gratefully, only to find that Henry's ears were red all the way to his neck. "Huh? Why such a reaction?" "The weather has been getting colder recently. I thought you would be wearing a base layer or something, so I directly told you to take it off." "I'm sorry. I'll go find you some clothes to wear." He hurried towards the bedroom, and his back view seemed to suggest a hasty retreat. "So that's how it is." I felt like crying but had no tears. "Then I took it off without hesitation just now. Surely it would make him think I'm very frivolous. How could a person make such a huge blunder? Am I some kind of automatic trouble-making machine?" "Oh, 9. Unexpectedly, Henry brought a dress. "Am I supposed to wear it?" "Why? I thought you'd want to try it." He raised his eyebrows. "Because when I wore it in the store the other day, you seemed to like it and took a few extra glances." "Oh no." So he noticed. I thought I was being discreet, but what I was peeking at wasn't the dress. It was Henry. At this point, it would be too shameless not to admit it. Actually, nervously, I was trying to find the right words, but my rhythm was disrupted by his sudden question. The bitter-sweet aroma of coffee on Henry, mixed with the faint sweetness of whipped milk foam, lingered around my nose in wisps. His lips opened and closed, like fresh and moist flowers. "If you weren't looking at the dress, could it be that you like me?" As he spoke, he leaned forward, his inquisitive gaze sweeping over me, and his charming smile was simply enchanting. "Yes, I like you." "My face," we said in unison, and saw the astonishment in each other's eyes. Oh my God, what's the difference between this and confessing without being pressed? Besides, I thought I should go all out just now, and I shouted quite loudly, like taking an oath. I didn't even have the courage to look up, and I just wanted to bite my tongue and kill myself. Deafening silence invaded. The only thing that was active was the sound of my heartbeat, which made me dizzy. But after a moment of silence, a shadow loomed over me. Look at me, James. My chin was gently lifted. Before, Henry had always been mature, elegant, and charming in my mind. His smile was like a magically proportioned potion, having the magical function of making people feel like a spring breeze. But his expression now was overly delighted. The curve of his raised lips was a bit off, and an almost terrifying fanaticism spread with each breath. Thinking of a python waiting for an opportunity in the primeval jungle, a sudden chill ran down my spine. Could you say it again? Henry looked at me obsessively, and his fingertips rubbed against my lips. Once the arrow is shot, there's no turning back. I forced myself to repeat, I like you. The unfinished words were swallowed between our lips and chewed over and over. Henry held my face and kissed me gently at first, but soon he wasn't satisfied with just a peck and started to explore deeper. I was in disbelief, my pupils quivering, wanting to ask, but the feeling of pressure in my mouth was even stronger. He seized the opportunity to go deeper and invited me to dance. Our eyes built a bridge between us, and the chaotic pleasure ran wild on it. The sound of kissing filled my ears, and the rubbing sound of the fabric made me blush. The saliva between our tongues formed a thin, ambiguous connection. Ugh! I couldn't catch my breath and wanted to turn my head away, but I was trapped within a small space by Henry's arm and had nowhere to hide. The sofa beside me sank. He sat down and then picked me up, placing me face to face on his lap. I suddenly realized that my previous fantasy had come true, and I was overwhelmed by an unprecedented sense of shame. And this straddling position created a problem that didn't occur in my fantasy. A certain part would touch from time to time. I tried to prop myself up to cover it, but his hand was pressing on my waist, his palm burning hot, and the way he stroked made me tremble all over. Wait, worried about being exposed, I grabbed his hair in a hurry. Henry looked at me blankly, a drunk-like blush rising on his cheeks. His lips were slightly parted, his breath uneven, and the desire surging in his eyes was almost like a tangible tide, about to overflow. His hair, which was always neatly combed, was now in disarray, as unsteady as he was. A strand swayed, following the rhythm of his breath, tickling my collarbone one by one. I was stunned by his beauty for a moment, like a naive sailor bewitched by a siren. But instead of being captured by the song, I was captivated by his beauty and willingly surrendered. When I came to my senses and remembered what I wanted to say, I realized how hard it was to speak. Henry, why did you kiss me? Why did you touch me? I struggled inwardly, but felt that neither question seemed right. But he misinterpreted my thoughts, and his fingertips slid down, caressing me in an ambiguous way. Are you feeling stuffy and uncomfortable? Henry untied my belt and spoke in a breathy voice by my ear. My ears are very sensitive, and I almost jumped up. Henry obviously noticed it, smiled and moved closer. When he asked again, his lips directly touched my earlobe. He reached out his hand, and his voice was full of temptation. Let me help you, boyfriend. What, boyfriend? In the short moment I was stunned. Henry had already used his dexterous hands to reach into a private area. I grasped his wrist, but didn't have much strength to stop him. So, are we in love with each other? Henry seemed at a loss for words. He closed his eyes, then looked at me again and said seriously, I can't do such things to anyone other than my lover, James. I like you too. But his actions had nothing to do with his serious expression. Please date me. He kneaded and rolled me while making a sincere invitation. It was really an extremely strange scene. Slow down, Henry was so excited that the corners of his eyes were slightly red, and his deep eyes were misty with water. He kept kissing my ear and said, promise me, okay? Being touched by someone else is completely different from self-relief in normal times. I really couldn't handle it. Besides breathing irregularly, I couldn't care about anything else. In a trance, I felt the world spinning. My fingers that were gripping his sleeve curled up and then loosened. I'm willing. I promise you. Let go quickly. The pleading only makes the wind of pleasure blow more fiercely. I'm swept up and can't escape from the whirlpool. The persistent offensive finally completely destroys the precarious fortress built by willpower. His ear was bitten by Henry. Woo! He uncontrollably trembled, gasped for breath, and fell into Henry's arms. 10. I established a romantic relationship with Henry, yet I felt dazed. If it weren't for the sewn on buttons on the collar that quietly witnessed everything that happened, I would have suspected that successfully dating the person I liked was just a dream. The shirt he wore on the day I saw him was neatly ironed and hung in the most conspicuous position by the door. I would giggle whenever I caught a glimpse of it. Hee hee. Just as I was secretly delighted, the mobile phone on the table started buzzing. I jumped up to check and saw a string of hearts in the note. It was a message from Henry. There's cherry cake as a new product in the store. Do you want to come and have a taste? My heart was so excited that it seemed to fly into the clouds. But before I could finish typing, "I'm coming," the editor called. "James, don't forget the book signing event at 11. The stylist I booked for you will be here soon." My heart, which had been about to fly, plummeted straight down. I was at a loss and said, "This is not the same as what we discussed before. You clearly promised me that I could skip it. I have social anxiety. In order to get permission not to attend, I even completed double the usual amount of work this month. By the time the deadline arrived, both my assistants and I were exhausted. You must go. I've already promised the organizer on your behalf." The editor sneered. "I didn't expect you could actually finish it. It seems you didn't work hard enough before. Young man, you can't be too eager for comfort. As for your workload, we'll discuss it again after the book signing event." After saying that, he hung up the phone, leaving me no room to argue. I stared blankly at the phone screen. The stylist was already ringing the doorbell. I could only reject Henry in a daze. "Sorry, there are suddenly some work issues that need to be dealt with. Can we go another day?" The emoji he replied with was a puppy wagging its tail and waiting. "Okay, I'll wait for you." 11. The waiting seems endless. I'm held up by many things and my schedule is packed. After the book signing, I need to attend an interview show. Before I knew it, I haven't seen Henry for 3 weeks. I miss him so much. But every time I receive an invitation, my replies are always sorry. I really can't get away. Can we change the time? And he never complains. I feel guilty and uneasy. I shrink into a corner and want to type to explain to him, but I'm yanked up. "James, so you're here. The recording is about to start. Come quickly. I haven't been getting enough sleep recently. When I stand up suddenly, I feel dizzy and my steps into the venue are probably staggering." The dark crowd in the audience made his tinnitus worse. The host's questions are quite routine. I put on a mechanical smile and barely manage to cope. But when it comes to the free Q&A session with the audience, I have difficulty breathing and pray nervously that my fear won't show. In an unintentional glance, I unexpectedly found a familiar figure. Henry is sitting in the front row. Although I don't know how he learned about my schedule and miraculously showed up, I felt as if I had taken a reassurance pill. Henry raised his hand with a beaming smile and asked the first question. "James, is there still a chance for us to see the conclusion of The Hollow Man and the Clam in our lifetime?" There were a few old fans in the audience. Hearing his question, they smiled knowingly, and the atmosphere became much more lively. The work he mentioned was my debut work. It was serialized in the form of a 4-panel comic during my college years. However, after the magazine where it was initially published ceased publication, it was put on hold for a long time. "Yes, The Hollow Man and the Clam will soon meet you all again in the form of a single volume," I replied, gripping the microphone tightly. Besides being surprised, I was deeply touched. From the audience, cheers rose and fell one after another. The old fans were explaining the content of the comic to the new fans. Looking at the smiling faces, the tension that had been frozen in my heart gradually thawed. The subsequent interview ended smoothly amidst laughter and joy. 12. The program recording was completed, and I was surrounded by fans who wanted autographs and group photos. Finally, I was able to break free and rush towards the parking lot in a hurry. It was already a long time past the appointed time. I could meet Henry with great difficulty. What if he got impatient and left first? I was looking around anxiously when someone put their arm around my shoulder from behind. The aroma of coffee wafted, and I felt at ease for the first time in a long time. Sure enough, it was Henry. "Shoo!" He raised his index finger and made a gesture to keep quiet. Then he picked me up, stuffed me into the back seat, closed the car door, and his movements were smooth and seamless. "Sorry to have kept you waiting. I didn't mean to, Henry covered my mouth tightly and motioned me with his eyes to look out of the car window. There were still many fans looking for me with comics in their hands. My car has privacy film, but the sound insulation is mediocre, he whispered. I nodded to show that I understood. But as my eyes moved downward, I noticed a problem that couldn't be ignored. Just now, in the critical situation, after Henry squeezed in a flurry, his knee, having nowhere to put, got between my legs. I pretended to move nonchalantly, but since I was already leaning against the car door, there wasn't much room for me to retreat. For the filming, I was still wearing formal clothes. The smooth surface of the suit pants offered no resistance when sliding. Henry slightly adjusted his posture, propped his arms beside me, and raised his body a bit just to observe the situation outside. He didn't even touch me directly, but every time he moved, the rubbing sensation became more intense. I tried hard to ignore the repeated stimulation. Unfortunately, my body reacted too honestly and wasn't controlled by my willpower. Henry, however, seemed completely unaware. He closely watched the movement of the crowd outside the window, held his breath and waited intently for them all to march away, then smiled at me. They've all left. I don't know if it was my illusion, but he further encroached on the little space left between us. Excuse me, could you please move aside for a moment? I was worried about being noticed as acting strange, and the request was almost squeezed out. I'm so sad. Are you gonna send me away right after we meet? I thought you'd miss me. Henry looked wrong, his tone plaintive and pitiful. He blinked his eyes, which were glistening with clear water, looking like a stray dog. That's not what I meant. Ha! My explanation was interrupted, because his fingertips hooked onto my belt. Henry's eyes flickered, and he glanced down meaningfully. But it seems to miss me quite a bit. I was extremely shocked. After all, I had never imagined that Henry would say such a thing. And then I realized later that perhaps he had been doing it on purpose from the very beginning. What happened next made me even more panicked, and I tightly grasped those mischievous hands. What are you doing? Let them meet. From any angle, the timing of Henry swallowing his saliva was rather strange. It's so pitiful to be bound all the time. No way. The feeling of my skin suddenly being exposed to the air made me tremble. It'll get on the car. He seemed to have been well prepared and was fumbling in his pocket. Watching him take out 3 whole boxes right in front of my eyes, my face changed. I tried to secretly pull the door handle, but Henry held me down and pulled me back into his arms. You can't go out like this. Since I caused it, of course I'll take care of it, he said, opening the box with a happy smile. I won't use them all up. Don't worry, liar. 13. The hot air is thick. In a daze, I thought I was on a swing. On the car window, chaotic fingerprint and palm prints overlap, accumulate, and get out of order. I gradually lose my thinking ability, and even the action of pulling Henry's hair is intermittent. The entire parking lot was now empty except for us, and he had no qualms about letting me rise and fall dramatically. James, I also want your autograph. Henry pointed at himself. Sign it on my body. I was exhausted and didn't want to be tossed around anymore, so I readily agreed and took out a pen from the crumpled suit pocket that had been squeezed. But before I could write, my hand was pushed aside. Don't sign like this. I want a souvenir different from other fans. Now I can tell from the subtle differences in Henry's expression which smiles are malicious. But I have no idea what he specifically wants to do. Or rather, at this point, what else can we do? It turns out that Henry can always surprise me again. Part of my body was held by him and pressed against his chest. Thinking of a certain possibility, I couldn't help shrinking, but he mercilessly revealed the answer. Sign with this pen, teacher, until the juice is squeezed out and you can no longer write in full. Henry untie my arm, foot lick the lips, appreciate the mess of the chest, as if it were a treasure. This is what I got past the most excellent signature. My eyes lost focus and I couldn't even lift my fingers. Vaguely, I saw him planting tender kisses, moving downwards, to reward the one he had tormented so harshly. The ambiguous sound of water made my face flush. No more. I'm so tired. My waist arched again, trembling at the unfamiliar touch. I shook my head, trying to twist my body and crawl away, but my legs clamped around Henry's head when I turned, which instead made it easier for him. Ah! The moment he constricted his throat due to the feeling of suffocation, I completely lost control of my body under the terrifyingly wild pleasure. Countless spinning stars burst before my eyes. Bliss, it turns out, is dizzying. 14. Henry's birthday is approaching. Since the encounter in the parking lot, he realized he had gone too far and has recently reined it in. Perhaps out of deliberate restraint, our closest contact stops at hugs. Whenever the season changes, my skin is always very dry, but Henry will carefully apply hand cream for me when we hold hands. The tip of his nose was red from the cold, and his mouth was buried in his scarf, making his speech muffled. I don't want you to force yourself to accommodate me. I won't be so unrestrained in the future. I'm sorry. James, aren't you angry? Why don't you lose your temper with me? Your hands are so cold. You must be freezing. He kept muttering non-stop while putting gloves on me. I felt a hidden corner of my heart become soft and warm, similar to the moment of holding a cup of hot cocoa in the cold winter. Want to make amends? Sure, I said with a smile, slipping my hand into his coat pocket. Manager, I happen to be craving a cappuccino made by you. It's my pleasure. Henry pretended to be a theater actor, making an exaggerated curtain call gesture. I laughed so hard that I was out of breath and then grabbed him and started running. Run quickly. The light's about to turn red. At dusk, the setting sun sank. The street scene in front of me was bright and magnificent. Office buildings stood in rows, and countless glass windows reflected the setting sun, bursting with a golden glow like fire. The churning clouds in the sky also seemed to be in love, blushing and turning strawberry-flavored. My young lover and I laughed all the way, running hand in hand, stumbling, and embracing the shining world. 15. After a period of abstinence, I thought Henry deserved a reward, so I placed an order for baking molds and practiced at home in advance. When his birthday arrived, I carried bags of things to his house, planning to make a cake by myself. Let's make a cherry one to make up for the regret that I couldn't keep the appointment last time. In the kitchen, Henry said he was here to help me, but he was bustling around quite skillfully. If I had known you were so good at it, I wouldn't have come to show off my skills. Regretfully, I watched as he steadily put the cake batter into the oven, then rushed to whip the cream, hoping I could at least be of some use. James, I believe you can make a perfect cake on your own. I'm just helping to speed up the process. He came over, pinching my shoulders from behind, because I'm in a hurry. I was concentrating on operating the whisk and casually asked, "What are you in a hurry for?" "To eat the cake. It probably still needs to be baked for half an hour. If you're hungry now, you can eat something else. Why are you taking off my clothes?" Henry smiled brightly. "Eat something else." 15. Henry used a piping bag knife to smear cream on me unhurriedly. "So beautiful," he murmured with a sigh. I lay on my back on the dining table, being looked down upon by him, and for the first time, I deeply realized what it meant to be at the mercy of others. The edge of the stainless steel spatula was blunt and cold, glinting with a cold light, so even though I knew Henry wouldn't scratch me, I still couldn't help shivering when it touched me. After he noticed, he took the knife away. Then he picked up a cherry and dotted it on the smeared cream. "I'm not a cake," I protested in a low voice. It's really incredible to have to clarify such a thing, but if I didn't say it, it seemed that Henry really was going to taste me. "I know." Although he replied like this, he still bent down to bite the cherry. The fruit was like a bright red gem, plump and round, and he had removed the stem in advance. Henry tried many times but couldn't get it. I watched helplessly as the cherry rolled around on my body, and couldn't help getting anxious for him. Before I knew it, I started giving instructions. "It's about to fall. It's on the left. Oh, just a little bit more." Underneath me, the dining table gave a slight tremble. I came to my senses and realized that Henry was trying so hard not to laugh that his shoulders were shaking. "About to be eaten, and you're still giving others a guide on how to consume you." I was stunned. All right, I should have resisted. I shouldn't have toyed with the food. Could it be that, in my subconscious, I don't care how he treats me? Henry didn't intend to give me more time to daze. He lowered his head and gently licked the cream. The sweet smell spread. He ate with great relish and didn't forget to make eye contact with me. As his tongue swirled, an indescribable sense of excitement rose from the depths of my lower abdomen. "Henry," I tried to push his face away, but he took a bite on my collarbone. Henry didn't let go immediately. Instead, he gently rubbed the tooth mark with his canine teeth. It was hard to tell if it was a punishment. I let out a muffled groan. ignoring whether the cream would rub onto Henry. I sat up, put my arms around his neck, buried my head on his shoulder, and said, "Stop it, please, it feels so strange." Henry seemed to be successfully pleased. He picked me up and said in a hoarse voice, "Hold on tighter." I felt myself lifted off the ground. My legs instinctively wrapped around Henry's waist to prevent myself from falling. So obedient. He kissed me with a smile, and of course, his hands were not idle. The oven made a ding sound. I opened my hazy eyes and turned my head to look. The cake expanded into an ideal arc in the mold, like a dreamy arch bridge, shining with warm golden light. But neither of us should be able to eat anymore. "Don't get distracted." Henry turned my chin. "Open your mouth, James. He tastes like cream now," I thought in a daze. 16, 12 o'clock sharp. "Happy birthday, Henry." I feebly gave my blessings and struggled to get out of bed, saying, "I have a gift for you." I didn't succeed. My wrists were clasped by Henry, crossed, and pressed against the headboard. He grabbed the lace hair ribbon he used to tie his hair from the side, tied it on top of my head, made a bow, and asked with a smile, "Thank you for the gift. Can I open it now?" A sense of foreboding hit me, and I was sweating profusely. "We can't continue, really can't." Henry cupped my face and stared intently at me. "One last time, I promise." I shouldn't have trusted him. 17. Crossing the line. Epilogue from Henry's perspective. 1. I once thought about ending it all. I like men. I'm a cross-dresser. Everything I do is like dancing on my parents' landmines. I'm a freak nailed to the pillory, a disobedient son who deserves to be struck by lightning, making them loathe the sight of me. Why can't you be like a normal person? Don't let me see you again. Cutting my wrist hurt a lot, but I didn't succeed in dying. No one came to visit me. Lying in the hospital bed and counting the drips was quite boring. I opened James' comic book, completely by accident. There is a yellowed magazine on the cabinet. I guess it was left here by other patients. I wanted to kill time, so I read it casually. 2. The Hollow Man and the Clam is a 4-panel comic hidden in the corner, taking up a very narrow space, as if it's afraid of being discovered. Tells a rather baffling story. The Hollow Man, with an empty space where his heart should be, couldn't feel emotions and was insulated from both crying and laughing. He raised a pet clam. The clam was very irritable, and when it talked, its shell would open and close like a clapper. The Hollow Man thought the clam's pearl was beautiful and wanted to take it out and look at it, but every time he reached out, he would be severely pinched by the clam. Later, he no longer cared about the pearl and just wanted to interact with the clam. He still pretended to approach the pearl, and the clam still came to pinch him, but not as fiercely as before. One day, the clam had an accident. His shell cracked, revealing fine lines, which was the call of death. The Hollow Man watched helplessly as the pearl glowed and floated out of the clam, melting into the originally vacant place in his chest and gradually taking the shape of a heart. The moment the fusion was completed, he suddenly realized that he was in tears. The Hollow Man experienced emotions for the first time, but it was a deep and unforgettable sadness. "Actually, I've never hated you. However, hurting you was the only way I knew to touch you," said the clam. 3. I like this story. Without exaggeration, it has become my spiritual sustenance. After being discharged from the hospital, I frantically searched for the follow-up, not even bothering to eat. I was disheveled and had an almost pathological obsession with the ending. The magazine, however, ceased publication. Like a madman, I turned my attention to the author and finished reading all his interviews in one go, staring intently at every shot he appeared in. As time went by, it became a habit. One day, I was enlarging the screen image, scrutinizing James' face. It was impossible to tell whether his shy smile and evasive eyes were feigned. Obviously, I was well aware that curiosity was the beginning of sinking. The idea of longing to know the real him was already crossing the line. "Henry, do you know your expression looks terrifying right now?" A friend passed by me, shivered, and shrugged his shoulders. I pondered and turned towards the mirror. In an instant, I understood what my friend meant. The gaze in the mirror was moist, infatuated, and frenzied, filled with obscure desires that were about to overflow. If it was love, it would be too absurd. If it was hatred, it would be too ambiguous. At least one thing was certain. I wanted to see him, by whatever means. 4. The coffee shop being opened near James' house is by no means a coincidence. The methods I used to obtain his address by every possible means are not honorable. However, I didn't expect to meet him so soon. The image on the screen is not a persona. He is even more clumsy in person. He is a simple guy, with his thoughts clearly written all over his face. When I noticed that the degree of his blushing increased proportionally as I got closer, I remained calm on the surface, but was almost bursting with laughter inside. Is there really such a good thing? 5. He's really hard to deal with. The prerequisite for the relationship to progress is that the other party has to respond. But the only difference between James and a block of wood is that he can get shy. I feel like I'm casting flirtatious glances at a blind person. After painstakingly flirting with him, he's still off in La La Land. What kind of person is he? I even put my hand on him, and he apologized, saying sorry for blocking me. I'm so angry that I'm gnashing my teeth, but I can only take my time. If I'm too impatient and scare him away, it'll be a losing deal. 6. Finally, I coaxed James into coming home with me. Originally, I just wanted him to admit that he liked my face, as I was quite confident about it. If he admitted it, some things would happen naturally. But James confessed his love to me with a desperate determination. It seemed that he had forgotten that he had his clothes half off and his upper body was still bare. The marks of the highlighter on his collarbone hadn't been completely washed off. There were dots and dashes, and the twinkling numbers were the phone number I wrote down last night. If I could leave more marks of mine on him, could you say it again? I stroked his lips, and they felt as soft as I had imagined. I couldn't take my eyes off him. The string of reason was on the verge of breaking. I like you. To hell with taking it slow. I want to hug and kiss him right now. 7. Don't you feel cheated after knowing that I'm a man? I once asked James after we got together. He stared at me blankly, as if he had never considered this question, but his answer came without hesitation. I like you, Henry. Gender doesn't matter. As soon as the words were spoken, the first snowfall arrived. Hexagonal crystals spun and fell, causing a stir among the crowd. James tightened my scarf for me before cheering and reaching out his hand to catch the snowflakes, saying, "So beautiful. It's truly beautiful." When everyone was looking up at the sky, I placed a kiss on his glabella. To this day, I finally learned the ending of the comic. The Hollow Man pieced together the broken shell of the clam and always carried it with him. They can communicate through pearls and decide to overwrite the sad past with beautiful memories. As the seasons change year after year, they embark on fantastic adventures in every corner of the world. 9. After finishing his manuscript, James rubbed his eyes and walked over slowly, hanging on me and gently swaying. He's like a koala, so cute. He has gotten used to acting coquettishly. Henry, I want to drink a cappuccino. Okay. During the making process, he was so sleepy that he kept nodding, but he didn't let go of my waist. Warmth slowly flowed through every part of my body, and my heart became a spring gushing with happiness. I've also found my own pearl. 10. It doesn't matter if you don't understand the true meaning of love, because we will always be together. After the old wound receives the lover's kiss, it will bloom into flowers in spring.